So I want to start off thanking everybody for making today's Lunch and Learn. I hope you learn something, gain something, and even find it a little bit entertaining. My name is Robert Bush. I'm a planning program manager with the GIS team within the multimodal planning division. I've been with ADOT about 25 years. Half of that time was with the Photolog program, and we just did a Lunch and Learn on the Photolog and the return of the Photolog about 5-6 weeks ago, and the link is on the Lunch and Learn website if you want to learn more about the Photolog, how to log on to it, and how to use it now that it's come back. I'm going to start here with the agenda and go over what we're hoping to talk about today. We're going to talk about spreadsheets and utilizing them for data management. I know there's a lot of people out there that hopefully have spreadsheets that they keep data on, and we're going to show you an idea that may help you utilize that data in a much more visual fashion. We're going to talk a little bit about what GIS is, or Geographic Information Systems, and what it means. I'm going to be giving some examples of these spreadsheets that are converted to geospatial data, plus some analysis that we do along with the conversion of the data. The way we convert the data is using a tool called a Geocoder, and I want to give a shout out to Tom Tyndall. He is with the ITG GIS team, and he's the one that developed and created this Geocoder for us to use, and it'll make sense to you when I bring it up and show you what's going on with everything, but I think you'll be impressed with what it's capable of. We're going to demonstrate how the Geocoder works and even give an example. And then if someone in the audience is so inclined, we're going to have somebody submit some of their data, and I will do a live conversion of the data through the Geocoder so you can see what happens to it. And then obviously we'll wrap it up with questions and comments and feedback and everything like that. So a little bit about GIS. GIS is the science of where. Anything you do, anything that happens, anything in the world, whether it's in a store, where the milk is at, where the bread is at, where the diapers are at. That's GIS, because you can map it in a store. The same thing goes out on the state highway system. If I told everybody right now that I wanted you to go out this weekend and I've buried a cache, a geocache, something that you can take home and have for yourself, and I buried it at 33.1234 north and 111.5678 west, most of you aren't going to have any idea where I'm talking about. But if I said it's up on I-17 around milepost 299, you'd be able to find it. The vast majority of us would be able to find it without too much effort. And that's what ADOT does. ADOT, instead of using lat long or anything like that, we're the state agency. So most of our data that we talk about, we're talking about route and milepost, I-10, milepost 145, US 60, milepost 273. We always talk about the route and the milepost, and sometimes there's a beginning milepost and ending milepost, but we always reference most of what we do through that. The next spreadsheet here, I want to show you something. This on the right is two examples of the exact same data. On the left, and it's way too small to read, I don't expect you to see it, but is a typical spreadsheet. It's got your columns, it's got your rows, it's got your numbers, and it's got your values. On the right is when you take that data and make it geospatial and do an analysis on it. This is what you get from the data. And my question to you, which one do you think is easier to read and quicker and cleaner to convey some information if you were trying to show somebody what's going on or try to show what happened at a specific time, or in this case, it was the presidential election results back in 2016 based on state by state numbers. So which one's easier to look at, which one's easier to read to get an idea what's going on? I would think most of us would say the map. And that's what we're talking about today is maps, cartography. But it's not so much just making maps, it's having the ability to do analysis with the data that makes these maps. You know, most people, when they hear about GIS, and it's very easy to confuse with GPS, which we all know that's in our phone, in a lot of our vehicles and stuff like that. And they do run side by side. There's a lot of similarities. GPS is just a tangent of GIS. But most people think of maps and things like that when we do with data. But there's a lot more you can do with it. So I want to do an audience participation right now. I'd like to know how many of you have spreadsheets that you keep track of important information on or along the Arizona highways. You know, you keep a spreadsheet that says US 60 at such and such, and you know there's a guardrail there, or there's a speed limit sign there, or lighting, whatever. Or if there's a pavement project there, they're going to do a mill and fill, whatever the case may be. And I can't see anything. I'm going to switch back to my meeting screen because I'm in my work computer right now. But do we have a lot of feedback on that? I'm seeing a lot of yeses, few no's, but I'd say we're about 70%, maybe more, that have spreadsheets that have this data. Let me go back to my work computer. So what's next? It's time for a demonstration. I've got a couple different things that I'm going to show you today, 2 or 3 things. The first one here is some DPS data. That's the Department of Public Safety. We had a need to find out about HOV lanes and where the citations are being written for HOV lane violators. In other words, an HOV lane is only an HOV lane Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. The rest of the time, HOV lanes are just general purpose lanes and anybody can drive in them. But during the HOV time, you must have 2 or more people in the car unless you have a electric vehicle or a hybrid plate or something like that. So DPS does write tickets for violating the HOV lane during those hours. And we wanted to do an analysis for a report on where that was happening and how frequently and stuff like that. We reached out to DPS. They sent us from January of 2018 here all the way to early April of this year. If I remember correctly, it was somewhere around 27,000 records, which each record represents a ticket. You can see the citation numbers here. There's no personal information or anything like that in this data, but all of it you can see here. It includes the date of occurrence, the time of occurrence. The citation number isn't relevant to us, but guess what? Here's that highway, I-17, and milepost 205.9. Now, since it was a specific location, it just has a single location. That's like a sign, like a light post. In the case of this, a ticket was written. That's called point data. When you have something that has a begin and an end, like for instance, a guardrail, it has a starting point and an ending point. Maybe a pavement project where they did a chip seal or a mill and fill or something like that. That has a beginning point and an ending point. Those are known as linear or lines in GIS data. So for this, we were just looking at a lot of points. Now, if you continue to look here, you might think, well, what's so special about that? The latitude and longitude are there. Well, we did run this to see what would happen, and the data was kind of all over the place because a lot of times the officer might write the ticket for a violation at 205.9, but where they pulled the person over, whether they pulled off the freeway or whatever happened, that's where the ticket was snapshotted at, which doesn't do us any good. So we wanted to go by where the ticket was put in, the officer put the ticket in, and the location there. And as I said, we got somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 27,000 records, if I remember, spanning that time. So I'm not going to show you right now because to geocode all this data would take 2 to 3 hours. And obviously we don't have that time. I want to bring up what happened with the data. When we first geocoded it, and what that means is we snap it or we put it on what we call the linear referencing system, which is the ADOT network, all the roads and everything. That's another thing about the lat long. It might put it on the side of the road. It might put it at a Wendy's, a Jack in the Box, a gas station, whatever the case may be. But when we geocode data, we snap it to the highway. It's right on the highway itself. So when we brought all that data in, here's what we got. And I want to show you, this is the reality of data. And anybody that tells you otherwise, you should be a little fearful of, is there's no such thing as perfect data. All these dots you see out here, and let me make them a little bit bigger just so they jump out at everybody. Kind of oversized right now. But you can see, I didn't know, but according to DPS, we have HOV routes way out here on 60, on 10 in Quartzsite, way out here. Plus, it looks like we've got a lot of HOV lane usage down in the Casa Grande area. And surprisingly, on Grand Avenue, I'm going to have to start using the HOV lane on Grand Avenue. Obviously, we don't have that. This is one of the great things about doing stuff geospatially. Look how fast it jumps out at you when the data's incorrect, when you have some bad data within your data stream. We all know, most of us should know, that the HOV lanes only exist in Phoenix on certain routes. So all this outlayer stuff is most likely just typo mistakes. Instead of hitting 145, they hit 245 for the milepost or something like that. Simple typing errors, that's all it is. But you can see that the data outliers are all way out here. What we did after that is, after we cleaned it up, and let me make this one a little bit larger. This is what we had now. And we'll zoom to that area. Oh, come on. There we go. So now you can see it covers all the HOV routes here in Arizona, which is in metropolitan Phoenix. So one of the things we did was run an analysis. If you're looking at all your dots here probably right now, you're probably thinking, yeah, Bob, this isn't telling me much of anything. It's busy. There's dots over the whole freeway. You've narrowed it down to nothing. Well, this is where an analysis come in, and we can do what's called the heat map. And when we ran an analysis and clustering where the concentrations were and stuff like that, this is what we got. The reds indicate high volume. The yellows and lighter colors indicate low volume, all the way down to green with the lowest volume. But that's not telling us a heck of a lot here. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. And I can also show you the thing. After we geocoded the data, I want to open up the attribute table here. This is now the same data that I showed you in that spreadsheet, but now it's been geocoded. All the original data that DPS provided us, the violation code, citation number, date, time, all that information is still in here, but now there's an additional several fields that specifically deal with geocoding and making the data geospatially relevant. So this is what the data looked like when we used the heat map, where the concentrations are. Well, that's not telling us a heck of a lot. So what we did next was said, why don't we break it up? We see here that there's a time of occurrence, so we can see the morning rush hour versus the afternoon rush hour and what happens. So here's what the morning rush hour looks like. Ironically, the hot spots are the 101 up in the Northwest Valley, 17 coming in downtown, 10 coming in downtown, And ironically, the 60-10 transition near Broadway. And if you think about it, that probably makes sense because most people in the morning are headed to work, not coming home from work. So the volumes where the heaviest tickets located are on the routes that I'm guessing people are running late for work. They use the HOV lane to try to bypass a whole bunch, make up that extra 10 minutes. And that's where they're getting caught. What was very surprising, though, was when we go to the evening hours. No real hot spots except the I-10 right between the 51 and 17, and then a little bit of the 17 just north of I-10. For the most part, everywhere else wasn't too bad. Now, there's still thousands of tickets being issued, but there was no real hot spot. And when you look at that and you put an analysis to it, you're probably thinking, turn that around. Now most people are on their way home. Although I'm going to catch it if I don't get home in time for the wife's steak, it's not as bad as coming to work late. So I'm just going to stay in the lane and not violate the ticket. So you don't see as high a concentration in the particular corridors going home or anything like that. But this is just one analysis that you can do by taking your spreadsheets and geocoding it here. I want to move to another example here, and this is pavement surface type. I want to thank Sandra Harris and Zach Hallaby with the MMS team for getting this information. This is PECOS data. A lot of you might be familiar with it. It's a CSV report, and it's on surface maintenance, doing all sorts of stuff. Fog coats, chip seal, crack seal, obviously emergency patch you see here. But this is a relatively standard PECOS display of data, how it kicks it out and everything like that. Once again, interesting, but what can we do with it? So after we geocoded it, and it was thousands and thousands of records also, I took out the emergency stuff because I wanted to know where were flush coats done, where were crack seals done, where were patches done, and stuff like that. And this is all fiscal year 2023, so last year's data that was run. If you remember earlier, we had point data and linear data. So after we take all this data and run it through the geocoder, we get this for the linear data. You can see here that there's different colors, and there's a reason for that. All these different colors and lines all over the map. When we combine that with point data, meaning it was at a small spot that didn't have any length, it was at a particular one exact location. Now we have a whole bunch of dots added to it. And we can zoom in, for instance, to the Metro Phoenix area. And over here on my map, it has an explanation of what the colors are for the dots and what the colors are and the code for each of the linear things. So if you're looking at a lime green line here, it looks like it probably is code 101 permanent patch with premix. The nice thing about this is now you can visually see what's going on instead of looking at a spreadsheet. And I know there might be a few of you out there that can look at a spreadsheet and visualize what I'm showing on the map right now. And my hats are off to you if you're capable of doing that, because I don't think most people can, myself included. So most of us need to see it in some context of how the data is laid out. And this allows us to do that. It allows us to take a spreadsheet and put it on a map and map it on the state highway system. And once again, when you look at the attribute data down here in the bottom of the screen, everything is still with us. It was the 100 program surface maintenance, the activity code. We also have the work date, We got the route, which is what we need for the geocoding. BMP stands for beginning milepost. EMP stands for ending milepost. And you probably can't see it here, but it's not just even numbered mileposts. You can have offsets. So you don't have to go to I-17 milepost 220 to 222. You can go I-17 220.35 to milepost 222.79, for example. It doesn't have to be exactly on the milepost. In addition is the direction. Then the rest of this is PECOS output. Those of you that use PECOS are going to be familiar with it. It looks like it has labor, equipment, materials, expenditures, total cost, and stuff like that. So just like a spreadsheet where you can do an analysis on your spreadsheet, you can do the same analysis with this, but now you can not only do it geospatially, but you can combine it with things. The next demonstration that I want to show you is going to be an actual live demonstration. We're going to use, this is a copy of data that I got from Richard LaPierre. He is the encroachment permits manager, and a shout out to him for allowing me to use this data because it's just the right size for what I'm looking for. This is LPR, or license plate reader data. Any agency that wants to put a license plate reader somewhere in our right-of-way for traffic, whether it's the feds, enforcement, police, anything like that, have to go through ADOT to get a permit to do it. And this is all the permits that were going on. This data is about 7 or 8 months old. But guess what? It has exactly what we're looking for. First of all, it tells you what district it's in. It tells you the route, the milepost, the offset, the direction, permit numbers, and once again, a lot of what we call metadata, or data about data. It's a lot of the information about this particular record or what it is that we're looking at. So this scrolls down to be about 125 records total. The first line is the header line, and then there's 125 records after that. Now, when we process this data, which I'll show you in the geocoder, it has to be done as what's called a CSV, a .csv. And you're looking at it now. Most of you are going to say, no, this is Excel or Google Sheets. Yes, you're right. It looks the same, but the output's a little bit different. And both Excel and Google Sheets have the capability of exporting their data as a CSV, depending on what you use. So don't feel worried if you use Google or Microsoft Excel to use your data. Both can convert to a CSV. So we have the data here. I'm going to close that window, not saving any changes. And let's minimize this and that in our presentation for a moment. And now we're going to bring up this window, and we're going to open up the geocoder. It's going to take a few moments to fire up here. And what a geocoder in essence does is take your spreadsheet and it takes the location data and it looks specifically for a column that says S space 77 or S77. Tom wrote, I'm going to use the word fuzzy logic into it because I'm sure the way you write up State Route 77 is different from some other people. You can say SR 77. You might say S77, S space 77. Number of ways to do it, and it still understands the majority of the time what you're looking for. So I'm going to open up the geocoder here, and I'm going to turn off. I'll turn it off after we get it running. And we're going to open up that LPR file. And I have to pull this from my desktop. And here it is here, copy of the LPR ADOT's encroachment permits. And it is point data. It's just a single location. And each one of these are the fields It calls out district, route, milepost offset, direction of route. All these are the fields, that header line. Well, I know route is the I-10, the S77. The milepost is just that, milepost. The offset is the milepost offset. And we want the from type to base it off of all mileposts. We come down here, and this is a little behind the scenes work. It's using State Plane Central, which is the type of spatial reference that we use predominantly in doing GIS within ADOT. And then the road network that it's using is ADIS-PROD, which is Arizona's Transportation Information System, or our LRS. And we tell it to allow snapping to endpoints and begin points, and we hit OK. It right now is taking that 125 records and geocoding them as we talk. Now, it shouldn't take more than about 60 seconds to 90 seconds here. It's already processed 32%, it says, up to almost half. Give me a chance to get a quick Diet Coke. A real quick one, because looks like we're already there. It's doing the final processing and everything. And there you have it. It took 41.82 seconds to run that file. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn off all that Pecos data that I showed you. And now I'm going to enlarge the data that we just geocoded and take it so you can see all of it. We're going to zoom to it. Now you can see the entire state here. This is the road network. This is the backbone to everything we do in the ADOT GIS, MPD GIS team. It's on the road network. And you can see all the data is snapped, as we call it, to the road network. If we jump down here, you can see them on multiple roads, on I-19, on 82, 83, things like that. And you can see where everything's at. Obviously, there's a concentration on, it looks like, in southern Arizona versus northern Arizona. Also, let me open up the attribute table. And once again, all the data that was originally in the spreadsheet is still in the geospatial data file now, what we call a GDB, or geodatabase. That's what this is creating, is a geodatabase. It now has all the information that was in the spreadsheet along with all the geospatial data, so anybody with any sort of GIS software can take this and put it on a map. Now, the next question, let me come back to the presentation here for a moment, is you saw some of what it's going on in the spreadsheets. I want to pose a question to you. Say your manager comes to you with a data request. He or she wants to know where all the accidents without fatalities happening in speed limit areas ranging from 35 to 55 mile per hour inside no passing zones with guardrail end treatments as ET2000s on the leading edge of the guardrail, not the lagging edge, but the leading edge of guardrails with ET2000 outside the urban boundaries, and for 2020, 2021, and 2022, and they want it statewide. How many of you right now are predicting it's about time to use your annual and use a lot of it? With spreadsheets, what I've given you here, if you needed to come up with an answer, I'm probably safe in saying you've got weeks worth of work here, maybe over a month or even two, depending on how much data you're going to have to filter through. This is using spreadsheets. Picture trying to get all that information out of a spreadsheet. But with GIS, we can actually make that happen because, first of all, accidents are a GIS record that is already available. Speed limit zones, we already know and have, you might have a spreadsheet that says I-8 from milepost 7.5 to 9.5 is 65, and then 9.5 to whenever you get to Telegraph Pass is 75, and on and on. So you have a spreadsheet maybe that breaks down all these zones. We have the same thing in GIS for speed limit, and it breaks down all the zones and tells us what the speed limits are. We know where the no passing zones are. We have files that have the guardrails. Now, I am going to say we're not as up to date as Stephen Moore with the FIS team. Those guys do a great job of keeping the FIS software up and keeping the data up to speed. But we do have a good listing of everything. And what's nice is if we had a special request like this, we could reach out to Stephen or do it ourselves if you have the capability and get a report and geocode it. And you could bring in the most latest guardrail data on the end treatments throughout the state. And then urban boundaries, of course, there's a layer for that shows where all the urban boundaries are at. You want it outside that. And then, of course, each year of data, you just do that with the accidents and stuff like that and statewide. So with GIS, instead of looking at numerous spreadsheets and taking weeks upon weeks to do things, once you geocode the data that you need to look at, you're talking about sometimes minutes, maybe hours at most to accomplish this. The hardest part would just be making sure you get all the data. And that's kind of what our GIS team does, is we bring a lot of this data together in a geospatial format. Now, for the next part is going to be, I actually went out of order a little bit. I was going to do the live demonstration now, which I already did with the license plate reader, but I'd like to take a minute and ask anybody in the audience, if you have a spreadsheet, I only want about 200 or 300 records at most, but I would be happy to do a live demonstration of somebody's data. And if it's a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, you can forward it to me. If it's a Google sheet, you can share it with me. Does anybody want to volunteer their data to be geocoded live in front of everybody? Make sure you please, if it's got personal private information, obviously we don't want to share any of that. But if you've got generic state information data, is anybody... It looks like Eric, are you volunteering for long? Go ahead and turn your mic on if you'd like, so you can talk for a moment.
Afternoon.
Hi, Eric. How you doing?
Doing well. Yourself?
Doing great. Hope you're enjoying the presentation.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Is yours an Excel spreadsheet or is it a Google sheet?
It is a Google Sheets.
Go ahead and share that with me if you may. Send me a share invite and I'll get that, and then I'll switch back to the work computer and everybody can see me get that.
Okay. And your email address is?
What's that?
Your email address is?
R. Bush, Robert Bush.
Okay.
rbush at azdot.gov. I'm going to go back to my work computer here and go in here. I don't have any notification yet. Here we go. Got it shared. So Sweet Emergency Response Form. Let's open it up here. So how many records do we have here?
117.
Okay. I see you got some emails here. So what we're looking at here is this E column is going to be our route. I-17, SR-24, I-10, 303, 202, all this sort of stuff. Our mile marker start, that's what he's calling the begin my access.
Oh,
what are you doing to me? Boy.
Sorry.
Shares it once and then takes it away from me. Sounds like my wife giving me my allowance.
I put you on view only. I had you on editor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely. All I need to do is export it as a CSV. So we have our column here, mile marker, start number. You notice he's got 136.68 here, or just plain 198 here. We've got mile marker end here. So we've got our 2 or 3 necessary records to geocode. So let's go up here to file, and is it download? I'm going to download, and here's comma separated values. That's CSV. And we just hit it. And where did it send it to? Let's see. Okay, that sent it to my download folder. It's on my other screen here. Let me bring it over. So you see the sweeper emergency response form, and its responses in there, and that's the CSV. I'm going to move this back over. We're now going to go back here, come up here, open up the geocoder, and we're going to try to find that table. It was, oh, we're on desktop. We want to go to what was called sweeper. Why isn't it showing up? Is it a...
Download it to your downloads folder.
Yeah, I know, but I'm looking why it's not showing up on... Oh, I see. I'm in my different... Never mind. Thank you. Let's go here. Sweeper, sweeper, sweeper. There it is. And we've got errors. I'm not sure what that is. It's probably the name of it. So give me a moment. I'm just going to, it might be too long, or the parentheses that are in there, I think, might be causing the problem. Let me go to rename, and I'm just going to call it sweeper. This is the reality of live data. And just so everybody knows, this was not prearranged. It's not like wink, wink, hint, hint. I'm going to do a live data with somebody I've never met. I've seen Eric's name on stuff, but we've never really crossed paths or anything like this. So this is a actual 100% live data example that, and we're still getting an error. Patrick, do you know why? Are you still online?
I'm here.
There we
okay,
go.
so
It was because it was saying it was point data. That's why.
got it.
That cleared it. Patrick is our group manager and knows more about GIS than I have yet to ever find out. So he's a great reference. So we got our route here. Remember, that was the column that calls it out. We got our from. If you look here, that's that mile marker start. And we don't need an offset because it was built into the same column. So I'm just going to say 0. And our 2 point was mile marker end. And its offset is 0 because it's all in the same column. There's not a separate column. And milepost and endpoints and all that. Now let's hit OK. And we already got an error. Tracking line execute. I'm trying to see why it might have failed. Let's open. Oh, I know what it might be. Let me open it up here. It is, I forgot, is, and it's going to take just a quick moment here. It doesn't like spaces between 2 words. So let me just put an underscore. And these are little things that once you were to set up your data for sharing like this, it would just be a one-time setup. You shouldn't have to do this every time. You just set your columns up accordingly. I'm just going to call that mile start. And I'm going to call this mile end. And yeah. And I hate to do this, Eric, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to get rid of all this. Now, with time, we would have been able to put the underscores in and all that. But since we're doing a live demonstration and we have a limited amount of time, and the rest of it, what I'm going to do is delete. But once again, as I said, to qualify this, once we were to set it up with everything, all this additional data would be here. But just for the purposes and time constraints that we're looking at right now, I'm going to go ahead and clear these other columns and file, save. Let's see if that does it. And now let's cancel that, reopen the geocoder. And line, same thing. Route from ID is mile start 0 to mile end, offset 0, and allow endpoints. And now let's see what we got. Now it looks like we're cooking. So you have to always do a little bit of cleanup with the data. I hope everybody saw. All I'm doing is putting underscores in each. Now we've already completed all 116 records, took 17 seconds. Let's see what happened. Is this mostly in the Metro Phoenix area?
Yes.
So let's make this a lot brighter and jump out at us so we can see it. So there's the data there. I don't see that many. What we can do here is open the attribute table. You'll see everything is down here. I did delete some of the additional metadata, but if this was a real data project for us that we were doing, we would obviously keep that. But it looks like there's a lot of data that, like this, these all right here are saying that the to place it's not finding, and that's because that's why there's no mile end. And I was doing it as lines. What I can do, and I've got a separate video that I've created to teach people this, is there's linear data and point data, but we can't do them both at the exact same time. They can be in the same file. They can be in the same CSV, Excel sheet, Google sheet, but you just have to run them separately. You have to run the lines first, and then you extract out all the point data and run it a second time. But this is a little bit of what I'm talking about. Now, what's nice about this is if it was, let's say it was mainline, I'm going to use this main. There's structure, intersection, off-ramp, mainline. What I'm going to do here is go to the attributes and go to the symbology. And this I'm not going to teach you how to use. This is something we would learn when we start using your data. I'm going to add all values, and I'm going to make the lines big again. And now you've got colored lines. Looks like I don't know if you can tell or not. This is blue. These are green. Let me turn off. Why do we have just green when I see that there's... So most of these look like these lines are almost all main line. There is a blue one. If we zoom in here to the... Looks like there's a purple here. It might be hard for you to see on the screen sharing, but this one where I'm at right here is kind of a purple, and it's frontage, it looks like. So this is frontage road, this is main line. So this example didn't come off exactly as I hoped, but that's the reality of using real world data. As I said, we would clean up the header line so there were no spaces in it, just put underscores, stuff like that. And then we would run this a second time, which I'd be happy to stay on or something or show people at a later time. But you can look at a video that we'll make available. Patrick, if you want to share it in the chat window, you can, the video of the geocoding video. And it basically takes the geocoder and walks you through on how to do everything we just did. Now, obviously, the catch is, how do you do it if you don't have the software? And that's where you need to contact ITG. You need to contact us and get the software, get the geocoder and stuff loaded. But if you just want to put your toes in the water and see how it would look, we'd be happy to work with you with your data before you get in, jump both feet in to see how deep it is. Come out, reach out to us, and we can put something together for you. One of the last things, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, that I wanted to show was another demonstration that we had here of the wrong screen. Give me a second. Of what we can do with the data. This is our pavement condition data, and it was created predominantly by Lucas Murray, one of the GIS analysts on our team and an excellent person for visualization and GIS stuff. He created a story map talking about how to understand everything you're going to be looking at here. And you can take along, read it, but then you can go to the dashboard. And when you zoom in, and of course it's being slow there, it's starting to populate, it's just being slow. We're in Maricopa County here. You can select all the things. I'm not going to teach everybody, but you can zoom in on roadways. This is I-8 here, and you can see we're on mileposts now, and it says good, fair, and then poor is red. All these are pavement condition surveys down to 1/10 of a mile. And you can zoom in, combine it with other data. In this case, we added mileposts to it, but you can do boundaries such as the engineering district, the maintenance unit, the COG or MPO, the county, the particular route. If you only want one route and look at it as a whole or in a particular district or county, what you can do with the data. Then my last thing is, think about it now that your data is geocoded, you can use your data with everybody else's data. Because if everybody else's data has been geocoded, you can now draw comparisons and do an analysis to look, why is it that when this condition occurs, this happens? There's just so much you can do. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, which is very easy to do, on just how much you can do and what you can do with it. But it allows you to share your data with others and allows you to see other people's data being shared for you. And the best thing of all is we can set it up so that you still own the data. We don't want to be the owners of the data. Trust me, we've got our own data to manage and all that stuff. We do not want to be. We're not subject matter experts in your field. We don't want to own it, but we can help you set it up so that it's available for others to use. Plus, you can use others' data, other people's data, to do analysis, to do maps, to do cartographic requests, to do online things, everything like that. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and see what sort of questions that we have time to bring up? What we have, Tony?
So I see one from Eric. It says, what is the name of the geocoding software we're using?
Well, the Geocoder is written as a add-on to Esri ArcMap software. We have an enterprise license for that software, but it does need to be installed by IT in your computer, and you have to get a number of things installed and stuff like that. And then after that's installed, you add the Geocoder to it. It's not a standalone program all to itself. You have to use GIS software on top of it. Any other questions that are going on? Patrick, have you seen anything we want to address? And I see Tom's here. And once again, this Geocoder is Tom's creation, and he did a phenomenal job, because now we can take tons of these spreadsheets that are out there, these pillars of information and columns of data that stand alone as silos out in the middle of maintenance orgs and stuff like that, and convert them so other people can use them. And once again, they can start using other people's data. I see, can you spell the name of the software out for me? It's ARCMAP. Is there size? Go ahead, Tony.
Oh, yet another question that kind of flew up in the thread there from Julia. It says, is the ArcGIS Pro coming to ADOT?
Yes, it is. We're working with ITG, and I believe the rollout's expected sometime next year, potentially as early as January, February, but most likely about June or July of next year, I think would be more realistic. I do see a line by Nathan Carroll asking about a size limit of how many lines you can geocode at one time. No, there is no realistic limit. I mean, I wouldn't put 6.5 million records together at once, but as I said, that DPS data with the HOV stuff I've done, that was 27,000 records that I was able to do. You just have to make sure you can do it, late in the day before you call it a day, and let the computer run for 2, 3, 4 hours on its own. But I haven't encountered a limitation. Tom, do you know of a specific limitation to your software?
No, there's not a limitation. You just want to be careful. Like if you have a big 100,000 record data set, that's going to take hours and hours and hours to run.
Yep.
If it encounters an error at record 94,000, you're going to lose all the work. So it's kind of better to do it in smaller batches, where if you get a fail, it's not so doesn't cost so much to have to reprocess your data.
Exactly. Doing it in maybe, I would say 25 to 30,000 groups at most would be probably reasonable. I haven't had many crashes with that number of records. I do see scrolling up on the text, Patrick Whiteford did send a link to the Geocoder video if you want to learn more ins and outs on how to geocode data. Sage Donaldson, one of the GIS team managers, she included the pavement dashboard link that I was showing you, how you can zoom around and look around at stuff. And the nice thing about that, like the payment dashboard, is that you can share that with everybody. So that data, I saw your hand, Ed, give me just a second. That data, that LPR data, license plate reader data that Richard uses, he does his own geocoding now and uploads it periodically as they get changes to the LPR data. And that's available for other agencies and stuff to use to see what's out there. So that's a great thing. You can share it with anybody that has the link. You can share it with a team. You can limit it to certain people, whatever you want to do. Yeah, Ed?
Sorry, Bob, I hit the wrong button. I was going to write a chat. Do we have an ArcView online training in ADOT?
We have worked on ArcMap training.
ArcMap,
There is entry-level training that you need to create an account with through ADOT, because we have, I won't use the word unlimited, but we have a very high number of training videos available to us for free through Esri, the manufacturer. Esri, or ESRI, is the manufacturer of ArcMap, the owner and distributor of ArcMap. We do have tremendous amounts of video out there for just that. How to, even the introduction into GIS. What's a polygon? What's a line? What's a point? What's the difference, between all of that? So anybody that wants to follow up with this, I know I might have gone through quite a bit this past hour, but feel free to reach out to me. It's Robert Bush or rbush@azdot.gov. I do believe that I had shared my telephone number. Let me put the screen back up for just a moment while I was looking at all the comments and stuff like that. We'll go back to the presentation. Here we go. And my contact, that's my cell phone number there. And the email address is a little small. It's rbush@azdot.gov. But if you're interested in doing something or have more questions, you want to reach out, see what we can do with your data, and see what's available to you once you geocode your data, it opens up a plethora of other information. And my last story is pavement. We worked with the pavement team. They had this awesome data set, but it was all pavement data and it wasn't geospatial. It was all tabular. When we got it geospatial, now you could do an analysis, kind of like I brought up on that example. If roads that were paved with X type of pavement, with speeds of between such and such, with elevations and such elevations, you can query all this information to try to figure out maybe why was this particular pavement type failing frequently in elevations over 3,000 feet or in speeds of excess 45 miles an hour. You can help narrow that down because now you have other data to compare with. So we're pretty much out of time here. We're on our last two. Any more questions, please reach out to me. I'm available for working with your team. We can put something together and even get to the point of you guys or your team getting ArcMap installed, and we won't do the fishing for you, but let you fish for yourself and take care of your data. And remember, that's the last thing I want to emphasize is we do not want to take over your data sets. Far from it. As I said, we're not the SMEs. We don't have the time for it. But we'd like you to make your data accessible to everybody else, just like everybody else making their data accessible to you, so you can get better use of it and get better information from it. And that should do it.